Good afternoon, dear friends. Hello, and welcome to our broadcast today. The crisis in Iran, the worsening crisis in Iran. In Iran, there are processes taking place that many describe as irreversible under the current power paradigm. It must be noted that Iran's capabilities as well. In the world, it is constantly under serious restrictions and attacks. The recent decision by the European Union to designate the IRGC, the main backbone of Iran's military and ideological machine, as a terrorist organization is a rather serious factor. The economic crisis and internal turmoil, and undoubtedly as a tool of war. So, what is happening with Iran? Chronic inflation is intensifying. And not just intensifying, over the past month, it has shown a catastrophic trend. The population feels all of this. This is essentially double-digit inflation. This means a decline in purchasing power for the middle class and even more so for the most disadvantaged groups. Iran has a population of 95 million. According to Iranian respondents, the situation is such that they feel things are getting worse on a weekly basis. In other words, every week things keep getting worse. The rial is depreciating. It's not just a rise in unemployment that accompanies these phenomena, it's a reduction in jobs. In fact, the economy, which had more or less adapted to sanctions since 1979, is not just stagnating. It has started to decline very seriously. This has become especially obvious over the past 2 months. In other words, this is a state of difficult, harsh survival. Next, Iran, strangely enough, after reaching its peak, stopped its demographic growth. Iran is also aging very rapidly. Over the past year, the birth rate has fallen below the replacement level. Young people, and if you analyze videos on TikTok, Instagram, and other social networks, they see no social mobility or prospects for the future. During the suppression of the latest protests, according to independent observers, more than 22,000 people were killed, or rather murdered. And all this is happening against the backdrop of a mass emigration of all educated people from Iran. This is what you would call a brain drain if we use the English term. All of this is breaking the model of the Islamic Republic of Iran, which was designed for a young population. A mobilized society not only breaks the system, but makes the situation a crisis. And against this backdrop, of course, there is a complete crisis of legitimacy for the Iranian authorities. This applies to elections, local, rural, urban, and nationwide. We can't say that no one goes to vote, but the decline in turnout is very significant, and this is especially noticeable. Over the past year, and political engagement in Iran, which has always been vibrant when it comes to expressing political preferences, sympathies, and feelings, especially regarding the political system, the population has clearly begun to demonstrate, particularly after those executions I mentioned, a policy of covert sabotage. There is now distrust not only toward the government, but what is most problematic for present-day Iran, toward the spiritual institutions of Iran. So we're no longer just talking about protest. This is an erosion of consensus. And all of this is happening against the backdrop of Iran being blockaded at sea by the world's most powerful naval group. Currently, this group consists of a combination of ships, aircraft carriers, and strike corvette frigates capable of suppressing Iran's entire defense system. This means the ability to launch more than 400 Tomahawks simultaneously, just to make it clear what's at stake. And it's important to understand that the daily cost of maintaining this group on site is not 10, but more than $15 million and up every day. We're talking about daily expenses. These are simply enormous sums. And no one can keep such a group in place without taking action. That's exactly why people are saying the operation could start as soon as this Sunday. and Sunday is tomorrow for us. After recent events, control over society has become even stricter, even harsher. The resistance is expanding. In other words, all those norms that used to be natural for the population are now becoming more like formalities. There is evidence of a value gap. This is not a temporary revolt. In other words, the situation in Iran has already become overripe and will, whether America carries out an operation or not, we can see that this is a serious crisis. Regional and very serious ethnic rifts have run through the body of Iran. The Kurdish regions, where we see not just hidden but silent resistance that is no longer controlled as part of a unified demographic. Balochistan and now the Arab areas as well. In the south of Iran, Khuzestan. How is this manifesting in recent days? These are periodic outbreaks of violence. On a global strategic level, this is economic inequality, and this is distrust toward the center. And of course, external pressure, which amplifies all these tendencies. It's important to understand that this pressure intensifies things. Internal disruptions. Yes, of course, it consolidates Iran's elite, so to speak, but this pressure increases the burden on Iranian society. That is, all resources are already being diverted to external projects. Nothing is going into the country itself. This is the current situation. And what happens at such a moment? Geopolitics tells us that this is the classic effect of overloading the imperial model. Also, what is uncharacteristic for Iran and very significant for its future. All analysts note the rift and competition between the security, religious, and technocratic groups. In such a state, entering a war means defeat. The absence of a main unified strategy for the future and the country being governed on autopilot. In other words, there is no split, but this is a problem for any large country. And for an empire like Iran, it is the loss of a strategic direction. Iran is a complicated country. It so happened that part of my family is very closely connected with Iran. I've talked about this a lot in my broadcasts. The direct nephews of my great-grandmother were ministers. In Iran, they held the status of Khans. This is the well-known Jambazian family. Our common ancestors commanded the Shah's guard. That's actually what the family name means. And her uncle Artak, my great-grandmother's uncle, was a comrade of Yeprem Khan, Yeprem Davtian, a man who created modern Iran, who was Armenian. Yeprem Khan is a key figure in the constitutional revolution of the early 20th century. He could have become the ruler of Iran, but he didn't want to. He was an ethnic Armenian, the main Iranian revolutionary and military commander. It was he who overthrew the Shah of Iran, Muhammad Ali Shah, in 1909, relying on Armenian detachments. He was the symbol of the constitutional movement. He controlled Tehran after the victory of the constitutionalists. He controlled the entire security apparatus of the capital, the whole system, of the country's internal security. In fact, from 1909 to 1912, he was the ruler of Iran, serving as the military commandant of Tehran and the head of the police for the entire country. It comes to mind, when I talk about Iran, I always remember my relatives. That is exactly why, my friends, that is why Iran is it is such an incredibly complex, deeply difficult state. I happen to know it quite well myself. And of course, I would like Iran to be a modern, successful country where tens of thousands are not killed for their beliefs, a country that would preserve its territorial integrity, and which obviously, in my opinion now, is limited by its religious component in its development. Armenians and Persians have fought for hundreds of years, but they are ancient neighbors. Armenia is one of the oldest regions of the Middle East. It is a unique culture, And I have seen many Iranians in my life. I have communicated with many of them. And when these people, for example, when I come to Yerevan, I see a large number of Iranians. These are people who arrive, women in hotels wearing a chador with their faces covered, and then 5 minutes later, after changing, they go out into the street as European women who are indistinguishable, blending in with the crowd of Austrians and Spaniards. And French women too, already in beautiful short clothes and without the chador. Iran is a unique civilization. I wish Iranians well. I hope that Iran can follow the path of development and progress. This is very important. Returning to the topic of carrying out the operation, I'll say this. In my opinion, the probability of this operation taking place is 80 out of 100. Market analysts and industry experts have once again pointed out and emphasized that the overall probability is particularly and exceptionally elevated on Sunday and throughout the late night hours from Sunday leading into Monday. Let's see how events unfold. Those are my thoughts, friends. Subscribe to my channel, join in, and leave your comments. I try to post a lot of videos. I will, and have already arranged to involve my colleagues. I will be appearing in video broadcasts with my colleagues, my work associates, so that it will be more interesting for you, so you can learn a lot of practical information, not only about geopolitics, international law, and economics, but also for your personal life. This platform could give you the opportunity to reach out and get support on issues where it is possible. Thank you again so much. Please subscribe. I am very glad that you are here, dear viewers. Give a like. And of course, see you again soon at new important broadcasts. I read and study your comments carefully. I find it very interesting. Join the Telegram channel. Let's communicate, learn, and interact. Once again, thank you all very much, friends. See you next time. Obviously, tomorrow, unless some emergency happens, the broadcast will be tomorrow. Thank you, and see you again soon.